Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. Today I'm starting a new series of videos where I want to discuss and recommend books from different countries. I have realized that I'm reading a lot of books from the US and the UK, which is partly normal. I live in the UK and the US publishing industry is one of the largest in the world. Well, the largest in the world. So it's sort of normal, but I want to keep, reading from authors that are from different culture, different countries. So I'm gonna start with France in this video very easily because I have read a lot of books from French authors, but I'd really appreciate also if you could leave in comments suggestions for really good books from, various authors from different countries. I think some countries it will take me a bit of time to gather enough material to do, an interesting video, but I will get there, I promise. So let's start with France. I will recommend 5 books from French authors that I absolutely love. And at the end of the video, I have a little surprise, a honorary mention for fans of Game of Thrones. So let's start with the first one, But You Did Not Come Back from Marceline Loridan Ivens. But You Did Not Come Back is probably one of my all-time favorites. It is an absolute bestseller in France, but unfortunately it's not particularly well known elsewhere. The author, Marceline, is a Holocaust survivor who in 1944, when she was 15 and was actually part of the French resistance, was arrested and sent to the concentration camp of Auschwitz alongside her father. Unfortunately, her father did not come back. This was the last time she saw him. And the book is her memoir written as a letter to her father. So it's deeply moving. Interestingly, she focuses a lot on her life after the concentration camp and after the Second World War. And in particular about the challenges to get back to normal life after such trauma. And in particular, relate to people and feel understood by people around her who did not share that trauma. In her case, this put significant strain on her relationship with her mother and her sister, so the book is really interesting on that front. Obviously, this is not a particularly fun read, but it's deeply moving and interesting. It's only 100 pages. It's very short, but I promise you this will be the best, the most powerful 100 pages that you've ever read. Highly recommend. My second recommendation is The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupery. As a little anecdote, the book was actually first published in the US in both English and French because the government in France at the time, in 1943, was actually collaborating with the Nazis and had banned the book. And the author had actually fled to the US to try to convince the US to enter the Second World War. So the book was only published in France after the liberation of the country. The story is about a little prince who lives on a planet with a rose, and he decides to go travel the world and hops around a few different planets, meeting a few different characters. This is quite a whimsical and surreal story, but it's also deeply moving and I find beautiful. It reflects the sort of imagination of a child and it uses the innocence of the little prince to showcase the absurdity of grown-ups. The book is for both children and adults. Children will understand, just the first layer, but adults will appreciate some of the bits of wisdom and philosophy around life and human nature that are underneath. It's such a wonderful read. It's one of the very few books that I enjoy rereading because it always leaves me, very inspired and uplifted. It's just beautiful. Moving on to another classic, The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. The story takes place at the beginning of the 19th century and we follow the story of Edmond Dantes, who at the very beginning of the story is about 19. He is basically imprisoned after being framed by some people close to him and accused of treason. During his 14 years in prison, he meets with a priest called Abbé Faria who educates him, but also when he's about to die, lets him know that he has a treasure waiting for him. So Edmond manages to escape the prison and will find this treasure. He will spend about 9 years in the East and then will come back in Paris as the Count of Monte Cristo, a very wealthy man, and will seek revenge against the people who have framed him. So this is very much a story of hope, justice, vengeance, also forgiveness. It is a very gripping tale. It's always believable. It's very well written. There's also a whole historical background that's quite important for the book, which, you know, if you like history, will add a little element to it. And I have to say, after preparing for this video, this is one of the books that I absolutely want to reread, and I'll put it on my TBR. My next recommendation is Lullaby by Leila Slimani. I'm not even sure like how to classify this book, and I have to give a warning because it's a bit of a disturbing book, and if you have young children, you're not going to sleep after reading this book. So the story is based on a true story of a nanny that has killed 2 kids that she was taking care of. That's the story. So in the book, we know right away that she kills the 2 kids at the end of the book. And we follow a detective who's trying to understand what motivated the nanny to do something so horrible. So the story is very much centered around the 2 parents, Paul and Miriam, who are trying to juggle their professional life with, you know, their new parenting role, and Louise, who is the nanny. Because you know how it ends and you know that she kills them at the end of the book, everything suddenly takes a very troubling color. Even the most mundane thing becomes disturbing and very uncomfortable to read. So it's a really weird read, but it's brilliant. It is brilliantly done. It's very gripping because you're trying, as the detective, to really understand what happened with this psychopath. It is obviously, though, quite a dark read, so just be mindful of that. My final recommendation is a book that I just loved when I was younger, and it's Hunting and Gathering by Anna Gavalda. The direct translation of the French title is Together, That's All. And it's the story of 4 people who are lost, who are trying to figure out their lives and end up, you know, finding strength in their friendship. The main character is Camille, who is a young cleaner who is anorexic, who has difficulty with her mother, who lives in a badly insulated flat in Paris, but has a very unusual talent for drawing. Her neighbor is Philibert, who is a young aristocrat who lives in a massive flat. He is extremely shy. He has problems with OCDs and a stutter, but he's passionate about history and is so sweet. He's just lovely. And he has a flatmate, Franck, who is a chef. He's very rough around the edges and doesn't seem to be able to talk to people without shouting at them. But we also see this sweet and lovely side of him when he takes care of his grandmother, Paulette. And Paulette is the, you know, last character that we follow. She's 83, she lives in a retirement home, and she's generally very sad. She doesn't expect much from life anymore, and she just leaves for the visits of her grandsons. And so the book sort of intertwines their lives in a very nice way. And this is a story, obviously, of friendship, of resilience against adversity, and how friends, you know, can support you through difficult times in your life. It's beautiful. It's really uplifting. Those are the 5 recommendations that I have if you're interested in trying a French author. I did mention a little surprise at the end, and this is a honorary mention for The Accursed Kings, which, according to George R.R. Martin, is the original Game of Thrones. He was heavily inspired by this book when he wrote A Song of Ice and Fire. The book is set in the 14th century and follows the various kings from King Philip the Fair up to the 100-Year War with England. At this time in France, the kingdom was based on a feudal system, and so even though there was a king of France, this king was heavily reliant on the lords that had pledged allegiance to him. So obviously that leaves a lot of room for intrigue and backstabbing. The Accursed Kings has 7 books, some of them called The Iron King, The Strangled Queen, The Poison Crowned, The She-Wolf of France. British people might know this one. This is Isabella. Isabella is the daughter of the King of France who was married to the King of England, Edward II, who really doesn't care about her because he's gay and so he prefers spending his time with a British gentleman rather than with a French woman. They still manage to have a son, that's Edward III, because all the kings are cursed in France. They die one after the other, and then suddenly Edward III has a claim on the French thrones. Now, naturally, nobody in France wants to see a British people on the throne, and that's the 100-Year War. You're welcome. Whether the kings were actually cursed or not, this is based on historical events and historical characters, which I personally really enjoy reading about. I hope this was helpful. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. Leave your recommendation in the comment section, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!